I am too.
Couple days ago, I shot a little video. I forgot that we even had that on this watch because, we're not showing that? Okay. Because I was so pumped about this. This is basically one of my host picks. It is a must-have item for our birthday event, so we'll run the video and the accompanying audio. And we get started with, honestly, in the 20 years now I've been doing this, one of the most historic watches I've ever presented. If you remember your history classes, science classes, you'll remember the name Yuri Gagarin. Why do you know that name? First gentleman in space. Before the Americans got into space, back in 1961, he was in space for about 90 minutes or so, did some orbits of the Earth. Mm-hmm. This is the company that produced the watch he was wearing back in 1961.
That's right.
Now, that's the foundation for why this watch is so incredible. There's so much more. Let me point out, there's 3 color choices, first of all. Let's get that out of the way first. The black stands apart from the other 2 for a reason we'll explain, but just note the black dial will be different. There's also a gray dial, and the one inside the capsule, which is modeled after the capsule that he was in, is the white dial. I've had a number of you ask me, which is the one that's the actual reproduction of his watch? This is it. The white dial version is the reproduction of the watch he had on that very historic day in 1961 when he was shot into space, and his watch had that brand, which if you read Russian, you can read very clearly right there. So that would be the one if you want the actual reproduction. But there are 3 choices here. So you have from, am I even saying it correctly? Sturmanskie is how I've been pronouncing it?
Sturmanskie is how I would, yeah.
Okay, so.
It means navigator in Russian.
Oh, see, I did not know that. Okay, I just learned something there. But these are the 3 dials. There's the gray dial. A number of you have already been picking these up ahead of time. In fact, the gray dial has been the biggest seller so far. Birthday price $359.76. I could talk all night, but the real expert right here, Craig Hester, is going to talk about this. And in fact, if you have the current issue of, is it IW Magazine?
Yep,
that this is in International Watch Magazine. There's an article on page 116 that this gentleman wrote about this piece.
Yeah, I did. They happenstance of they were doing an issue on military watches, and they asked me to write a piece about Russian watches in space. So this watch is covered in that issue, and we moved on. And a number of other of the Sturmanskie watches. There's a rich history of Sturmanskie watches being in space. As Sean mentioned earlier, this is we represent the brand Sturmanskie here in North America, and it is the original brand that built the watch that was on the wrist of Yuri Gagarin when he went into space in April of 1961. This is the 50th anniversary of his flight. There have been all kinds of parties all over the world this year about that. If you want something that is truly going to be a collector's item and a historic piece representing that event in history, this is a way to do it, and it's a way to do it for watch lovers. I am not one for hyperbole, and Sean knows that, but yeah. I truly, when I say that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, this truly is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There really is only one official commemorative edition of the Yuri Gagarin watch produced by the original company, Sturmanskie, and this is it. It is a numbered limited edition, as you can see very clearly there, of only 500 pieces. I want to make this very clear. It has been made very clear to me by the manufacturer. Once these 500 are produced, it is over. It will never be repeated. Not just for the mere fact that there's only one 50th anniversary, even if they were to do a similar watch at some other point. Yeah. But they've even said that once this one's done, they're not doing another reproduction of the original watch again. This is it. It's the 50th. It's done. This is one, literally, buy all 3 to have all 3 of them in your collection. It comes in this amazingly cool packaging, which really is designed after the Vostok capsule, the return capsule that Gagarin was in. Now, several people have asked me, why in today's world would they produce a watch that's 38 millimeters? Because we all know that big watches are in. Yeah. Well, the original watch was 38 millimeters. Back in 1961, when Yuri Gagarin went into space, they didn't make 50 and 55 millimeter watches.
About such things. That was a bedside clock back then.
Right. I mean, except for the big divers, you know, the normal watches were 38, 40 millimeters. The original was 38. the number of things that are the same with this watch as the original are really striking. First of all, this is a 17-jewel manual wind mechanical Russian watch movement built by the Polyat Company of Russia. This movement is no longer made. It was a movement they bought the last quantity of specifically for this watch because it emulates the original 17-jewel movement that was in the watch. It is the same size. It is the same case thickness. As Sean pointed out earlier, if you want the one that is the most like the watch that was actually on Yuri Gagarin's wrist, that is the white one. But let me be very clear that all three of these are actually reproduction dials of...
It's a different show.
That's a different show. Of the original watches that were built. One of the things that's kind of interesting about this, Sean, is, and I like to tell people, you know, in the American space program, they particularly picked watches and planning for them to be marketed and so forth that were, you know, the Speedmaster and so forth. This just happened to be the watch that Yuri Gagarin had on his wrist. There was no plan for this to be the marketed watch tied to the first human space flight.
Good point.
He got this watch upon graduation of flight school like every other pilot did. So these dials are from that original series. With the black being a little bit of an exception in that it is updated a little bit, and they did that on purpose to have one dial that was tied to the evolution of the brand.
Well, and again, with
I could prattle on and on about this.
No, and I could believe you and I alone. We could do 2 hours just on this piece
watch.
Because there's so much to get into here. But the key points, I guess, that I should bring up to you, part of my job is to mention things like value payments. There are 6 of them, so the first one gets us home. There is free shipping. If there was ever an enticement to get more than one, it could be the fact you won't pay multiple shipping costs because there is 0 shipping cost. I just wanted to show you the black dial. You can see this is more of the modern interpretation. In fact, if you go to shopnbc.com, you can click back and forth between the two and get a real good idea the differences between the two. So this is slightly more modern than the white and the gray that are going to be more, not more, but an exact duplication of the piece that Yuri Gagarin was wearing into space.
This is the current brand logo of Sturmanskie, and then on the white and
there's our website.
And the gray model, you have the earlier model logo, which also has the Kurova.
There's the black. See how different that is.
Our first Moscow watch factory logo on it, which anybody who knows Russian watch history will know the meaning of having that. I'm holding here, this is the article that was in IW magazine. I want to give a shout out to Wexler Jewelers for loaning me their copy here locally.
That was good.
That was nice of them.
Because I don't have one yet even.
This is, it actually is an article that I wrote for IW about the history of this watch and the story behind it being the watch that Yuri Gagarin wore and how remarkably similar. This is also, you talk about wanting to have authentic. Again, it's an authentic Russian movement. It's loaded with Cyrillic. There's not a stitch of English anywhere on this watch.
That's very true, which I love.
On the back where you see the little rocket taking off on the back. Now, obviously, that's not the way the caseback would have looked on the original. It actually would have been just a simple, plain stainless caseback. This is in order to commemorate the flight. What you see there in the Cyrillic right below where the little rocket is taking off, that is "Let's go" in Russian, which is what Gagarin said as they were taking off.
That's right. Bit of trivia.
So you have, this is truly a piece of Russian watch history.
Let me very quickly show you the luminescence on this before we go. This is the gray. The gray and the white will have the same luminescence. Black a little different because of the different font that is used to those numerals. $59.96 is your first payment. Pre-show, the gray started selling the most. They were all selling, but the gray was the biggest seller.
And of course, the second you said the white was the closest to one Gargarin wore, I'm sure that took off.
Then that's going to be probably will catch up and be the first one to go.
And I like the look on the black because it's just a cool looking watch.
Coming up later on.